So for those waiting for OLED iPad Pros, we have news regarding their release, so let's talk about it. According to Korean source The Elect, we can expect new 11-inch and 13-inch iPad Pros with OLEDs in the first quarter of 2024. Now this lines up perfectly with the release schedule Apple's had for a while with the iPads, because we roughly see a new model release every 18 months, and considering the last model released in October, these new OLED models releasing in March or April next year makes sense. Now some of you might be wondering, what are the benefits with OLEDs compared to the mini LED panel we already have with the iPads? Well, similar to iPhones, we could see increased brightness, higher contrast ratio, greater color accuracy, and lower power consumption because it should now be using LTPO, since for those curious, the current iPads only go down to 24Hz, but these OLED models should offer true variable refresh rate by going all the way down to 1Hz. And by the way, would like to remind you guys, like this video and subscribe for more content like this, it would be appreciated. And that does make me think this will pave the way for the standby feature to come to iPadOS. For those not aware, Apple just offered this with iOS 17, where you can turn your iPhone into a display for your nightstand that shows you the time and some widgets. Now, as cool as this is on the iPhone, I always thought this feature made more sense for the iPad because a larger display is naturally better for displaying information, and also this could kind of be Apple's answer to the Echo Show and of course Google's Hub products. Because instead of releasing a standalone product, they could just give us a dock for the iPad that turns it into a smart hub-like device, and that would be perfect for most consumers, and is essentially what Google's doing with their Pixel tablet. So yes, Apple, simply copy this. Anyways, coming back to LTPO, currently with iOS 17, only the 14 Pros display the standby screen 24/7 because it can refresh at 1Hz, unlike other iPhone models, and so I can see the same thing happening with iPads. The OLED models should be able to display information as long as you want, but on other iPads, it will only show you information for a few minutes, and you'll have to wake up the screen again, and so this will be a massive advantage with these OLED iPads. But more excitingly for me, as a fan of the 11-inch size, I'm glad we're finally getting a display upgrade after years of this size being neglected and not getting the mini LED upgrades. It could also help differentiate the range, since currently the Air and the Pro basically have the same panels, with the only difference being 120Hz and slightly higher brightness. And so if the 11-inch was OLED instead of LCD, that would upsell consumers to the higher end iPads. Now the Elect does tell us the specific type of display Apple's using is hybrid OLED. This basically gives you the best of both worlds. You get the strength that comes with a rigid panel, but also the thinness of a flexible panel, which is what the iPhone uses. Apparently, if Apple were to use the exact same iPhone panel on these iPads, it could possibly crumple, and so for longevity reasons, it makes sense to use hybrid OLEDs. In fact, because of these new type of displays, we get twice the brightness on these iPads, whilst offering 4 times the longevity. Some of you now might be wondering, is there going to be a price increase? Well, unfortunately, yes, that might be the case. Both Ross Young and the Elect are very sure we can expect these displays to be more expensive to manufacture for Apple, and so the current prediction is $1,500 and $1,800 for the 11-inch and 13-inch respectively. And that is quite the price increase, guys. Currently, Apple charges $800 and $1,100, and I'll be honest, I don't think consumers are going to accept such substantial price increases. These basically bring these iPads on par with MacBooks with the M1 Pro and M2 Pro chips, and of course have a much more powerful OS, and so at the very most, I think they can only charge $100 to $150 more for these OLED panels. And I feel like we always hear about bad news regarding pricing of future products, but it never really ends up being the case. The most recent example is the 15-inch MacBook Air, because many reports were suggesting this would be $1,600 or $1,500 at the minimum, but no, Apple surprised us. The same thing can be said for iPhones, because even though they do get more expensive to build every year, Apple's yet to increase the price of the Pro models. And in fact, many reports were adamant the 14 Pro was going to get more expensive, but no, that was not the case. And yes, I know there's a high chance the 15 Pros get more expensive because of titanium, but I do still think there's a small chance prices do stay the same. Of course, for those outside the US like myself are always screwed with pricing either way, but at least in the US, I don't think pricing for these OLED iPads are going to be bad as these rumors do suggest. Yes, Apple is beginning to give us more pro features on these iPads to justify higher prices, like Final Cut for example, but no way they could justify a $500 increase no matter how good the display is. Also, in the off chance this does end up being the case, I'm very sure the price will eventually come back down in the coming years. While Samsung and LG Display plan to produce the initial batch of panels, we could see BOE join the gang and also produce these panels, and they of course charge much less for their supply displays. And yes, I know BOE is pretty bad at passing Apple's verification test, but even if that's the case, as Samsung and LG continue producing more of these panels, the price of these components are going to come down, so yes, eventually Apple's going to bring prices back down for these iPads. By the way, I do want to mention for those wanting slimmer bezels, we do have good news because Ross Young has told us the 2024 models could be 11.1 inches and 13 inches. Those are small increases, and so while Ross Young does not say this, I think this means the bezels are getting thinner and the chassis itself is not getting any larger with these iPads, so that hopefully means existing Magic Keyboards and other accessories should work just fine with these iPads. It's just the bezels getting thinner to allow for a larger display on the front. If you're wanting much larger displays though, there is a chance we still see that in the future, since occasionally we do hear about Apple developing 14-inch and 16-inch iPads, but it seems for now Apple's pushed these back, which makes sense because Apple should focus on improving iPadOS first, and then we should see larger models. Since right now larger iPads only appeal to those doing art on iPads, apart from that, there's not much of a market, and so iPadOS needs to become more like macOS first, and then we can justify having a 14-inch or 16-inch iPad. Anyways, let's delve into your comments. So Jay Smoothie says, the Mac Pro should be discontinued, Apple should focus on the iMac being the primary desktop machine and put all the resources into that product. Now, while I'm also fond of the iMac, I do think prosumers care about having the flexibility of a machine like the Mac Pro because they can use other displays. Also, when the iMac's internals eventually become too old, and of course lose support, the display it has becomes redundant, whereas with the Mac Pro you can of course replace the machine and keep using the display that still works perfectly fine. And so it does make more financial sense to use a Mac Pro over the iMac for professionals, in my humble opinion. So Alex regarding the 15-inch MacBook Air says, I think I'll wait for the M3 version because while the M2 is great, it's not that much of an upgrade over M1, hopefully M3 delivers. And yes, I'm basically in the same boat. While I do very much want a 15-inch regular MacBook, the M2 is not going to be a big upgrade over the M1 chip, and so hopefully in early 2024 the M3 versions of both the 15-inch and 13-inch MacBook Airs do release. Anyways, let me know your thoughts in the comments, make sure to like and subscribe for more content like this, and thank you for watching.